Hello, how you doing this afternoon? I'm so happy to be with you today. I think it's going to be an interesting little conversation we're going to have about those empty shelves. I know I wanted to explain first of all, if you haven't seen one of our videos before, my name is Reverend Alicia Leslie, and I am the minister of Spirit of Unity Church, which is online. I had many years in pulpit ministry, and then I retired, and now I write and I study and I do my ministry online. This series that we're doing right now is about embracing change. You know, we're very resistant to change, but once we realize the only thing that never changes is change, there's a paradox for you. We want to know how to handle it. We don't want to be dragged kicking and screaming to our highest good. We want to step into it with passion and excitement and vitality. So yes, we are in times of change still. Sometimes the changes seem to be getting worse instead of better. Basically, how we go through it and how we come out of it depends on ourselves, right? So, I know that I've been a little bit irregular in when I do my videos lately, and sometimes I do them on the weekend, which I didn't used to do, and sometimes I don't do them on weeknights, which I always did. But I gotta tell you, I do not know what's going on with me, but I have had this really, really weird sleep thing going on where I'll be doing fine, then all of a sudden it's like, I really need to take a nap. I really need a nap. And then I'll take a nap, and then I will wake up 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night after I slept for an hour or so, and I'm wide awake, and then I gotta sleep, and then I'm wide awake, and it's kind of, at first I thought it was just making the adjustment from coming back to Utah, and maybe it was. I did also, I think I've told you before that I got a message saying that I'd been exposed to COVID, and had that question, could I have been asymptomatic, and this was some sort of part of that. So I just wanted to explain why I haven't been as regular as I normally am. Okay, that's out of the way. So let's get to today. First of all, making a couple changes, and the first one is I'm going to pick one thing about one National Day calendar item instead of trying to go through them all. And today is National Peach Melba Day. You know, it's amazing. The word peach Melba is nothing new to me. I've heard it. I went to cooking school, but you know what? In all my years, I never made peach Melba. So I said, I better take a look at this and see if I can figure out how to make it. Well, some of the things I found out is that it was named after an opera star. And they actually have a recording of her singing from 1904 on YouTube. I'll tell you something, you can find anything on YouTube. So her last name was Melba, and so she had a dessert named after her. And so I thought, what if I could make peach Melba? And actually, I can, and I may. And I may for a very good reason. Not because I have every ingredient that it calls for to make peach Melba, but I do have some of the basic ingredients, and I have a very creative mind and a great imagination. And you know what? So do you. We'll talk about that more later, maybe. So today, though, I thought it was really important. I wanted to talk to you about the empty shelves. Now, if you're following the news at all, if you listen to it on the television or radio, or follow it online, or get a newspaper, you'll see pictures in the grocery stores of empty shelves. And it can be kind of scary. We have had people saying that we should really stock up and have a little stash. I think we've talked about this before. And we talk about supply chain and why is this stuff not there. And, first of all, we tend to like to kind of jump to conclusions and decide what something is, either from something we saw on Facebook or, read in the news or whatever. Usually things have got a much broader cause than we give them. And one of the most frustrating causes is our own conclusions, our own mind, and our own fears. And that's what I wanted to try to kind of alleviate today, to take the panic and the pressure out of it, because there are issues on the shelves. But that's no reason to be a crepe hanging Debbie Downer, they say. We're talking, oh my God, isn't this awful? Isn't that terrible? Well, yeah, it's not the way we want it. But I was actually watching Joyce Meyer today during my prayer time. And she was saying that the average grocery store, her research, not mine, had 48,000 different kinds of items on a regular basis. Well, if you took half that out, you still got 25,000, 24,000 something to work with. That's where we have to get it. First of all, we have to understand how creative. Remember the other day, last time we were visiting, I talked about being a possibility thinker. Half full, half, what did I say, is the glass half empty, or is the glass half full, whatever. We don't want to be one that keeps thinking we're in a state of diminish. We want to look at being grateful for and using what we have. Because when we get the right mindset, our lives literally change. And I want to, when I give you these ideas, I'm not saying, well, that's the final, I know everything, I have the last word. I'm saying that I have some ideas I want to share with you that I think really can make a difference. And so I'm asking you to try some of these things. Try it for yourself and see what works, because you will probably be very pleasantly surprised. We have more power, we have more creativity than we think. So I wanted to, I think the last time that we visited, I had my Instacart items had just arrived, and I was getting ready to unpack them. Well, when I unpacked them, I found a lot of stuff was missing. Is that the empty shelves? Or maybe there was misunderstandings with the shopper, or, because you have your shopper. And on a couple of items, I got a text that said, this and this and this is not available. Do you want to pick an alternative? And they gave you an option to pick what you may alternatively want. And I did a few, and I don't know if I missed a few or what, but I had ordered onions. There were no onions. I had ordered breads. There were no breads. I had ordered jasmine rice. There was no rice at all. And it went on and on. I ordered garlic. I figured it said it was $1.29 a pound, so I ordered a pound of garlic, and I got one little bitty garlic thing. Well, now I could have gotten really upset. And I was not in the store, so I don't know about the empty shelf issue. I will say Instacart was very good about, refunding the items that weren't there and giving me satisfaction on a couple of things. I'd ordered this Vermont macaroni and cheese, and I was thinking about that, and I'm like, that's what I'm gonna have for supper. No cooking, except for when I opened the package. It was a macaroni and cheese with bacon in it. And hello, well, the shopper didn't know I was a vegetarian, and they didn't have apparently what I asked for. So what I may do, I contacted them, and they refunded me for the mac and cheese. Of course, they didn't have to pick it up. So I gave it to my brother-in-law, who I'm hoping thought that was a wonderful thing. So I could have had a bad attitude right off about what my order didn't have in it. Could have blamed empty shelves, like I say. I don't know. I wasn't there. But honestly, it's no big deal. So many things. We've got little molehills that we pour so much mental and emotional energy into. We do make them mountains. We just can't get past our anger or our dissatisfaction or our fear of shortages. Now, I did tell you before that I have a supply, my little stash that I have set aside for in the case of a really bad weather incident or shortages or whatever. Remember, the biggest shortages came from people panic buying, and sometimes there are real shortages. But if you have a little something that you can just prepare for emergency, you won't be panicking. Because if you're panicking, remember the basic law: where the mind goes, energy flows, and manifestation happens. Where the mind goes, energy flows, and manifestation follows. Okay, so if you're worrying all the time, you're going to create worrisome circumstances. Let go of that. So there may be empty shelves. What are you going to do? You're going to know that you have the imagination and the creativity to work with what you can get. Hang on a second. I was thinking back when I was thinking about all this stuff to back in the 60s when people were building bomb shelters. So they were digging and they were making these shelters, and they were putting food and water and everything down there in case of the bomb going off. We never did that. I guess we figure, well, if the bomb goes off, well, we'll go with everybody else, and because what would we be left with when we came out? Better thing to do would be to make peaceful circumstances so the bomb would not be an issue. But a lot of people did. And if you ever want to see a cute movie, check out Blast from the Past, about some folks that were hiding out in a bomb shelter. No bomb actually went off. The world just went on along. It was a false alarm thing, and they emerged many years later. But you can check that out at another time. So one thing I want to tell you is don't be fearful of the empty shelves and go out and panic buy. There is no need. If you want to build yourself a little emergency supply, in a cupboard or cabinet or closet or whatever, pick up a little bit of this extra, a little bit of that extra, and just keep it in there. Check the dates from time to time, and make sure that you're cycling it around. One of the things that I find helps very much to kind of bring you back to reality when you're getting into the panic thing is it actually comes from scripture from Philippians 4 verses 12 and 13. and it says, I know how to be abased, which means without, and I know how to be abound, which means having plenty. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed to abound and to suffer need. Now that's, see, so we can't base our lives on whether we're having a time of need or we're having a time of abundance. We make our own lives, and the best attitude that we can keep is going to guarantee us the best life experience. Sometimes we just have to suck it up, tighten our belts, and move forward. Doesn't mean to give up on anything. There is a wonderful, wonderful phrase that has guided me many times, and it says that necessity is the mother of invention. And that's why we have creativity, is to figure it out, to make wise decisions, to learn, to experiment. There is a wonderful television program which is not on anymore, but you can get it on YouTube. I was so excited when I found you could get it on YouTube. Now, the series was done in, I think there were six weekly 1-hour segments. On YouTube, it's broken down into like 10-minute pieces. But what it is a comedian and a food critic got together and created this series going back to different times in history and exploring the ways people lived and ate. The emphasis was on ate, because you would see what they did. There was one that was called Wartime, and it was about, excuse me, during the war, and how the people had to be creative. It was World War II or one, I can't remember, maybe both. But it was about how there was rationing. Now, we have not experienced rationing in my lifetime, aside from in the 70s when there was gas rationing. Boy, that was a number. I think that was also created. It was not natural. It was something that there was probably money for someone involved in the background. But we did go through it. You'd have to wait in gas lines for, seriously, hours to get some gas. And sometimes you would get up to the gas pump just to find out that, guess what, they ran out. Kind of like trying to get a COVID test today, huh? We're doing the best we can. Let's work harder on being grateful for what we have instead of criticizing what we don't have. Now, because of the shortages and the rationing, you're only allowed so much of certain things, people got very creative. They actually made recipes, which we use today, that were come out of necessity. And a lot of times, some of the best stuff we've got comes out of necessity. I like the story about chop suey. Now, chop suey may have come from Chinese restaurants in America, but the Chinese did not, it doesn't come from their history, from that cooking. The story, as I once was told, is that a group of servicemen were very hungry, and they wanted to go out and get something to eat. So they went to this Chinese restaurant. Well, they were just about ready to close, but they didn't want to turn the servicemen away. So the chef, the cook, took everything in the kitchen, and it was like, and it's like everything but the kitchen sink. He threw in everything he had and made this wonderful thing that became chop suey. That is now an actual restaurant item. But it was basically whatever they had, they could throw together. That's kind of what stew is. and a lot of other things where you take what you've got and you make something with it, and it winds up to be quite good. And seriously, with YouTube and other resources, the internet, you take what you can get and figure out what you can do with it. You want to remember to be flexible, to not say it has to be this way. Now we get back to the peach Melba. Peach Melba is like grilled peaches and ice cream and raspberry sauce. Well, I actually have canned peaches, which would be difficult to grill, but I can pop them in my toaster oven and maybe sprinkle just a little sugar on the surface and brown them a little bit. And the raspberry sauce, I actually have some raspberry jam that I'm going to put a little bit of liquid into to kind of make it more of a sauce than a jam. And I happen to have in the freezer some Cool Whip. No, it's not ice cream, but I'll tell you something. I'm salivating at the thought of these lightly browned peaches, which I also could saute with a little bit of butter. Get them a little brown and caramelized. Put on some of that raspberry sauce and Cool Whip. I think I'm going to be in for a real treat. Not because I had everything it called for to make peach Melba, but because I can make peach Melba with what I've got. Did you know meatloaf came from times of shortage when they would take whatever they had, they'd take the tougher cuts of meat and grind them up because that makes the tougher less tough. And then they would add things like breadcrumbs, which stretched things, and like eggs, which kept them moist. And then they would put whatever they had on top. See, that's just it. You can't think a recipe has to have every ingredient just like it says. Let your creativity go a little bit. My daughter was telling me she made meatloaf the other night, and she said, but she says, I put the ketchup on the top a little bit thick, and so it kind of was overpowering. I had to kind of scrape it off. And I said, well, you could have watered it down, number one. Number two, I never use ketchup. I use tomato sauce. There are so many ways to do things. Don't limit yourself. I watch a particular YouTuber on TV, and she's like an inspirational person. And she has a sign on her wall, and handwritten, and it says limitless, except the paper was too square for that one long word, so she wrote limitless. And I thought, wow, even that has so much power to it. Limitless. Too often we limit right away. Let's do less limiting and more creating. Another wonderful item that came from being creative in difficult times is bread pudding. I love bread pudding. What happened? Well, you need a dessert or something. You got some dry bread. What are we going to do with this dry bread? Ooh, you need a dessert. You whip it up, add some eggs and milk and sugar, and, let it all soak together and bake it, and it's yummy. If you want to move that dry bread around and do it another way, you can throw some eggs and milk together, throw a cheese in there and get it all mixed up wonderful, and put it in the oven and bake it up, and you've got, oh my gosh, cheese strata. It's almost like easy quiche, All the things we can do. Don't be panicking about what isn't on the shelves. Work with what you've got, because that's only going to make you more creative. Did you know that back in wartime, I think it was in the Second World War, They had shortages of different things. One of them was apples. And would you believe they created a recipe for mock apple pie? Now, my mom was still making that when I was a teenager, and there was not that we had plenty of apples, everything was fine, but it was a recipe that people loved, and guess what substituted the apples? Would you believe Ritz crackers? That's a fact. Oh my gosh, it's too funny. My parents would make this appetizer, and it would be Ritz crackers with a blob of ketchup and an onion slice on top of it. I don't know, they loved them. I wasn't into onion in those days, so I probably wouldn't have had it one way or the other. I was looking in a recipe, I look up camping recipes and stuff like that for the newsletter for the campground. And one day I was looking up some antique recipes. Sit down, you'll need it for this one. It was a recipe for mouse stew. Seriously, and it called for like 24 mice. Hey, you know what? I think it was Eddie Rickenbacker was a pilot, and his plane crashed, and he wound up in an air raft, and prayed one day for food, and a seagull landed on the side of his raft, and he thanked God, and he ate the seagull. God help us! Don't make me do that. But it's just don't get all in a snit about bad times. When there's hard times, make the best of them. And then you will look back years later and say, it wasn't that bad at all. So on that note, I want to do one last story real quick, which I've probably done before, but you know what? A good story is always worth repeating. It's the story about Jesus feeding the 5,000. So Jesus was speaking, and all these people were coming to hear him teach. And it was like, oh my gosh, yeah, they were at it, learning, sitting, preaching, teaching for hours. And then someone came to Jesus and said, the people are hungry. And so they said, they thought about it, how are we going to feed all these people? Well, a little boy came up, and he had, I think it was 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And the story says that Jesus gave thanks, he prayed, he gave thanks, and they broke up, gave the disciples instructions to go out and distribute it among the people. And then in the end, after everybody was done, they actually collected 7 baskets of fragments. Well, how did that happen? Miracle? Could be. Why would we limit God and say there's no such a thing as a miracle? We've had miracles in our lives, and I could tell you about them, and I can tell you about miracles in my own life. But anyway, there's another way. Sometimes miracles happen by right of consciousness. Some people who maybe they just didn't want to, they couldn't wrap their minds around, this bread and fish just manifesting, which I still think can happen. But what it was is that when Jesus prayed and he opened the minds of people, and the people were stashing food because they were saying, shoot, there's a lot of people around here. I got food, but they don't. And then their hearts were moved to open and to share. So it wasn't like through stuff just appearing. It was like people being willing to share what they had. So miracles can happen anywhere in many ways, but most of them begin right in our own consciousness. And if you want to keep your consciousness high, remember, think positive thoughts and let God do miracles in your life and use all that great creative power you got. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you soon. God bless. Have a great day.